Thank you, everyone, for attending the Managing Developer Knowledge with Paul Jones and myself, Peter Hirschmann. I'm Peter Hirschmann, Director of Operations here at Platinum Edge Solutions, and Paul, you are.
I'm Paul Jones, Manager of Developer Experience at Configura, live from my kitchen, kicked out of the office today. What else? Head of team operator, but that's something else. So the reason we're doing this presentation, I actually asked Peter to do this a while back. So a while further back, me and some configurants visited Platinum Edge Solutions, just sort of a touch base. How are things going? Is there anything we can help with? And also, we took the opportunity to shadow their developers for a little bit, just to, again, get a feel for how they work, what their needs are, what tools they use and don't use, all this kind of stuff. And while I was there, I watched a behavior that really kind of like blew my mind. We were shadowing one of Platinum's newer developers. They, while we were just sitting there, they grabbed a ticket, read through the ticket. They real quick pulled up OneNote real quick, did a search, and found this article describing, I don't remember what it was like materials or something, and then switched over to Emacs and started banging out a solution. And that all took place over like 2 minutes. So I watched a developer who had been there for, I want to say, less than a couple of months, pick up a ticket from a customer, find the information they needed to start working on it, and then just started working on it. It was freaking amazing. This developer was as functional as someone who had been there for 6 to 12 months, and they had just started. It was amazing. And so I poked a bit on it, and it has to do with this process that Platinum goes through to keep knowledge available for their developers. And so later on, I hit up Peter and said, hey, I think we need to do a presentation on this. We need to share this. This is so powerful, and this is such a great way to scale teams and upskill teams. I think this is worth talking about. So here we are. A general maintaining, developing, creating knowledge and a knowledge base session. So that's why we're here. Click, I guess.
Yep. Perfect. Well, thank you for those kind words. And we try very hard at Platinum Edge to maintain our documentation. It's something that I just kind of do passively, but it has turned out to be very beneficial for everyone here at PEZ. So I'm going to go through a summary now of the presentation, and which will then dive right in. So for the overview, we have what is documentation? We'll talk about what it is. We'll talk about documentation alignment. This is going into bringing everyone on board because you're going to need everyone on board. Getting started with it and maintaining documentation, the process for that. The format and contents will be handled by Paul. I'll go through the organization of your notes and the documentation, common notes, and then some trainings. During this process, we'll have several slides for asking questions because we kind of switch back and forth. We found this to be pretty interesting. So there'll be time with slides for questions, but feel free to ask whenever. And then if we have time, we have overview of tools. So we have some nice flexibility in here. Okay, beginning. Should you do it? Everything in business starts with money. So this will be particularly useful to those who have to convince a manager to give you the time and money to do documentation. So it saves time, and time equals money. So, and in the beginning, it will be an investment, but over time you'll have, as you bring people on board or people forget things or you're looking at best methods, this will save you time as you're like, oh, I don't have to recreate this. I already have it and I can just start off running. There is lower maintenance because if you're finding the best methods and you're finding you already have documentation, then you can write your solutions for maintainability, which means more development, which everyone wants. There's also less running at a wall. So if you have a developer who gets stuck on something for 2 hours, they become pretty demoralized. It can affect the office, especially if it happens a lot. So this improves morale overall. Feeling, even with notes, feeling like you've accomplished something and solved the problem feels great, and it will improve the office environment. It is definitely worth the investment. We do it here quite a bit, totally worth it. And it is not a one-time purchase. So it is, when I say be ready to invest, it is going to be an ongoing process, but it will save you time and money in the long haul. So early investment does pay off later. What we mean by documentation. So we mean everything, almost at least. So I like to document everything. That's just kind of how I am. I find the more I have, the more that's to reference by everyone else. So aiming for everything is really good. You're not going to hit it, and that's okay. Overall code structure is something you're going to want in there. For CM, that's things separated by like directories and section headers. That's important later for organization. You're going to want your best methods for systems and code standards. This is an absolute must to make sure that you're doing the right thing every time, and especially as you start to have generations of best methods for things. You're also going to want the nitty-gritty of every method and function. Remember, almost every. But for things, for those that recognize build 3D versus get 3D, these are two similar functions, but actually achieve slightly different things. And knowing the difference between that can help you from creating a problem later to solving a problem now. I like to include everything else as well. This includes company information, stuff about your company, stuff about the building, role-specific information, such as for developers, QA, account managers, and so on, contact info, and favorite donut. So I specifically list favorite donut because that is a page we reference quite a bit whenever we get donuts. That is definitely not applicable to everyone. So it's a great call out for, hey, your documentation is going to be for your company. Some of you are going to have different things. So pick what works for you. Speaking of that, one size does not fit all. In this presentation, we are providing you with best practices, not absolutes. Some things work for us, that won't work for you, and that's okay. You're going to have different tools for different needs. Paul's going to go over a variety of these or has these and is happy to answer questions on them. Habits and processes are based on people. You're going to have people add an entire mix to your company, and you're going to have some people that like to do this every day, some people that want to section off time. You're going to have processes for when, hey, it's good to take notes or not. But that'll change based on the people. And then not all information is equally valuable. For some of you, early on, you're certainly going to want to focus on the most valuable information. And we can't tell you what is most valuable for you. Only you know what is most valuable for you. But you will want to start there to get the best return on your investment right off the bat. All right, documentation alignment. This is the very beginning of it. So you're going to want to bring everyone in. This is very important to ensure that this remains successful throughout the process, which is ongoing forever. So everyone should be using your documentation. This is the best way to get everyone on board. It is also the most useful. You're going to have everyone from executives who need information to managers to developers to QA. Everyone needs information, and it's great to have it in one place to go and get it. This also works for when you're onboarding people in every position. You now have information there. Include them in the processes, formats, requirements, and tools. Basically, there are a lot of aspects that we'll be going over, and you'll want feedback on all of these. Not everyone will agree with everything. You can't please everyone with all things. However, the more you can get people involved, the more you can be purposeful with choosing the right tools and requirements for you, the more successful you'll be in the long run. And then you will want to allow for additional training and resources. We will go over adequate resources that you'll need to do this. You also have some people are just a little slower with this. Some people are busier. Some people are resistive. You want to make sure that you provide the adequate training because once they're on board, they'll stay on board. It's something they're going to continue to use and continue to feel the benefit of. Okay, settle into the documentation. So you're going to draft your tools and processes, which we talked about. You're going to designate your maintainers then, who will be trainers. You will finalize your tools and processes because during this, you're going to want to find point people to do this. And then you're going to want to allow autonomy for local scope notes and maintenance. So that means that you're going to be scaling the solution across an entire company. So for Platinum Edge, that's like 20 people. For Configura, you're going to be in the 100 or 200s, depending on where you're doing it. For larger companies, it's going to be even more. So for all this, you're going to want to have point people at various levels. And that's where you're also going to want them to customize their notes that works for them. Because the more you can get this working for everyone, the more you're going to get out of it, the more notes and documentation you're going to have, the better it's going to go. Okay, maintainer, I mentioned that, and they are very important. You're going to want a point person for this. You need to have someone who's directing things, maintaining things. Documentation does not maintain itself. Configura migrates every 6 months. You need to update your documentation for that. They update, or they're updating the documentation with that. So very much you need people to do this. So by this point, you've brought everyone on and you've picked your tools. Now find out who is the most invested or energetic. The first person who's doing this and directing this might not be the most invested by the end of the process. They might be like, I'm not a huge fan of this tool. You really don't want to have that person maintaining it. You want to find someone who really likes doing this, who is invested in the tool, who finds the most benefit. And with this, you may need to hire one. So look around your company, see who's invested. If you can't find one, then look around and say and hire for one. We had a big reason I was hired at Platinum Edge Solutions was I said, hey, I have to document everything to learn. And that was a big hiring bonus for Platinum Edge. And then once you have them, provide them with the proper resources. This is very important, as you can have the most excited person on earth, but if you just give them a notebook and a pen, they're not going to get anywhere. So make sure you give them the time. That's why you've just spent time picking the tools, figuring out your processes. So make sure they have what they need to succeed. Quality and motivation. So for the most effective notes, you'll want high quality notes. That'll be covered in detail later in content and format, but overall they need to be detailed. They need to have the information you need. They need to be clear. If no one can understand them, they're of no use, and they need to be intuitive. You really want them to be at a quick glance for people of various different types of learning to be able to go, oh yeah, find the information they need, see it, understand it, and then make use of it. The maintainer should have the highest quality notes and the most motivation. That's why you'll want them. They will, and I put should, add most of the initial notes. So the reason why I had the slash there is if you start off this process and you have them running it, and then you find they're not adding most of the initial notes, it's someone else, you may want to redirect the point person to that most excited person, because documentation isn't a hobby. It's not something people pick up for fun. It's something you kind of do, and it's something, or I usually don't go searching out for documentation as a role, but it's something that some people just enjoy doing, and that's really who you want doing it. So once you get started, it should be very telling about who is your most invested in this. They should be able to add notes for others. What I mean by that is there are some people who just are busy, don't have the time to do it. They're not interested in it. And while you do want to get them on board and going with it, early on, it's very good to just say, hey, they can pass their notes on to the maintainer and the maintainer can write it. The maintainer is going to know how to format it. They're going to know how to make it clear, detailed, and intuitive. They can ask questions, and it takes the burden off the individuals doing it and is a great way to start. They should also have the time to review notes added by others. So you're going to want to make sure that you have the correct notes in there. As I said, things will change over time. You will need to go back and modify notes as you run into things that have become outdated. Okay, getting started and maintaining now that you have your point person and tools. So your maintainer, they should identify your most frequently requested information. As I said before, it's find your most useful information and start having that filled in. You're going to start feeling and seeing the benefits sooner if you're adding that information in. Think about the things that you're regularly referencing. If you have a platform where everyone chats, see what questions are frequently being asked, and then start filling those in every day. Don't wait to do it. Don't wait to figure out too much. Find a way to go, hey, get some information, get it in there, start practicing. It should become a habit, and that's what you want the maintainer to have, is a habit of filling in their notes. And then as you start doing it every day, it'll be part of your daily work. So again, building in that habit. For team members, check your dang documentation. So if you haven't had it before, it is going to be a change in habit for them to go look at the documentation first. You're going to have to point them to it. You are going to have to say, hey, did you check the information? Be nice and polite about it. Maybe don't go, oh, I Googled this for you, and Google says, which is kind of a joke you can do. But you will want to redirect people to check documentation first. I generally go with a rule of thumb of spend 30 seconds looking for it. And if you can't find it, then ask the maintainer, does it exist? Because if it exists, they can point you to it and then you can find it. But if you can't find what you're looking for in 30 seconds, it's too hard to find. So with that, you direct all questions to a public forum or the maintainer. So you can obviously have more than one public forum, but you really want the questions to be visible to the maintainer. So that way the maintainer can see what's being asked, what are people looking for first, what are they not looking for first. I will frequently, after a question has been answered, will find the documentation and post a link to it to go, by the way, the answer was here, just in case you were wondering, or, hey, I can see it. Does this information need to be added? You can also go, oh, try searching for this word that is associated with it. Yep, for missing documentation, provide them with the notes and fill it in as it comes in. Okay, maintaining it, lead by example. So you are going to want to have your maintainer should be using it. This should seem obvious, but just make sure that they are referencing it for themselves. You're going to want to have your senior developers, your regular developers, your managers. Everyone should be using it, which will then cause other people to realize, hey, this is useful. They're using it regularly. It'll encourage to onboard everyone faster. And yeah, it's definitely use it as much as you can. It will help grow itself. New employees should be required to use it. So as part of just make it part of the habit and part of being in the workplace. So that way it becomes part of the routine. It's very normal. For those others who are not using it yet, when you onboard them and they see new hires using it and they see them being successful using it, they're going to go, huh, that is useful. I should hop on too. So it is a self-reinforcing policy. Make sure to have adequate resources. So this is where small notes, just including your daily work. If I take 5 minutes to take a note, I don't call it out. It's just part of the work I do. If you have time, you say, hey, man, I just created a new system. I really want to write down notes for it. Make sure that you allow them to have the time to do this. That's where you part of the budgeting for, hey, make sure they have time for their project. But as long as they do, say, hey, please get that out there. Please get it in a note. You're likely going to come back to it again. But with that, do not require this. Some people are resistant to taking notes. They just don't enjoy it. They find it tedious. So forcing them to take notes is not the greatest way to get them on board. This is where maintainers should be empowered to require notes from individuals as they solve new problems and bugs. This way, the people who are solving things can provide their notes. The maintainer can then ask them questions, get the notes from them, and create the documentation. This is hopefully not the end result because you want everyone adding to the notes. You certainly want everyone using them. But that way, for people that are resistant, you give them one less reason to be resistant. Tips and tricks. So the maintainer should set aside time to review new and modified notes. I kind of mentioned this before, and I find Wikipedia is a great example of this, where early on with Wikipedia, when people were trolling others on the internet, they would intentionally modify documentation to be wrong. Hopefully this doesn't happen in your company, but you will have outdated information. I have several times seen new hires make a note saying, oh yeah, when I did this, this happened. And I go, actually, that's a misunderstanding of the material. Let me explain what's going on. So going in, I removed the note or I modified the note to be more intuitive, thus increasing its quality. You're going to want to do, a plug of reviews into an existing meetings, such as show and tell or retros. Basically, find a way to incorporate this into your normal processes so that, again, it becomes normal. It becomes part of your daily life. It becomes as part of your company, as part of your intellectual property that you can hold on and use. If you need to, schedule regular larger reviews or more than just the maintainer. So bring people on, get their views on it. Can work great for code standards. We did quite a few of these actually, where we all gathered together and talked about our code standards, worked on updating them, worked on recording them, probably went through 5 drafts before we settled again on a new larger one. It's definitely useful, helps people feel brought on board, and then the notes and documentation help work for everyone better. Continuing on now, I should say, does anyone have questions on the previous material? No one's here right now besides Paul and I, so there are no questions. Feel free to email us though, or emails at the end of the presentation. Or if you're at the presentation and have watched this for some reason, then we'd love to hear your questions then. All right, Paul with format and content.
All right, let's see how this goes. Right, so if you're going to start this documentation system, you're going to have to start having talks about what your documentation actually looks like, each article or page or whatever, what's actually going to be on this thing. So there's a couple of different questions you need to ask yourself. The first one being is how in-depth do you want these I'm just going to call them documents to save time. How in depth do you want these documents to go? Keep in mind that as your documents grow in size, meaning there's more stuff in each individual document, you're going to need, or the reader is going to need to put more effort into getting the information out that they want. Whereas, with 3 lines, they can read that real quick and get what they want. I think something that's like a whole page, then they have to read the whole thing potentially to get what they want out of it. It's also going to require more structure. If a document gets that long, you need more aids to summarize the information or navigate through the information, or more references to other information, all this kind of stuff. And all of this translates to just taking more time and effort to put new documentation in. However, oops, sorry, didn't mean to click.
Oh.
There we go. So, however, it does also mean that covering more complex subjects is going to be easier. Something like the process for how snapping and connecting works, that's a big, complicated thing. There's lots of steps and different moving pieces and whatnot. So having a larger documentation covering it could be good. Having it all in place means that the reader is going to have to go searching around less for the big picture, right? If we tried to cover snapping in very small articles, it would be across like a dozen or so different documents. And so the reader would have to be clicking around and finding all the relevant links and reading in the right order and all that kind of stuff. And just fewer documents to maintain. That's not even true. That would be, well, okay, no, that's saying if we had larger documents, there would be less to maintain. Yeah, that's technically true. That means that every, cycle, when your maintainer is doing his like proofs and improving things and cleaning up things, there's going to be just fewer things to do. So could save time there. So yeah, dialing in how big these things are is something you're going to have to think about. You don't need to have an answer right now. Let's just keep this in the back of your head that there is a pros and cons, like sliding scale of effort to reward to consider. Click. So another question you're going to have to contend with is how discoverable is your documentation. This is hands down the most important question to consider and to think about with any piece of documentation. If your document isn't findable, then it doesn't exist. It is exactly pointless if someone can't find it. So you need to make sure you're doing what you can to make your document discoverable, findable, searchable, whatever. Naming things carefully is super important, right? If you're writing a document explaining how to apply a material to a primitive 3D based on layers, you don't just want to call it materials, because that'll cover like a million different topics and it'll be just lost in the noise. So naming things carefully and accurately is pretty important here. But another trick to make your document more findable is something like keywords. Don't have to call it that. I mean, every piece of software you use or whatever solution you use is going to either call it something else or not have a term for it at all. Point is just other things that are searchable, or other things that you can put in your documentation that can be searched for. So this might be just a separate section in your document for keywords, or it might be something you put in the front matter if you're using something like Obsidian, or maybe the software using has other systems for like aliases or keywords. It's just something else such that if I'm looking for, we'll go back to the example of how to apply a material. If someone searches for texture or color, we would want to have those keywords in the document so they would still find your document. Even though those aren't technically the right words, they still find it. They still get to the thing that they're looking for. So keywords are really helpful here. To sort of judge the efficacy of how, like your discoverability of your documentation, watch what your new members do, or just new members of the team, or like as you start this documentation up for the first time, just monitor how people search. Do they search for certain terms? Do they search for questions? If they search for these terms, are they the terms you were expecting? How often do they get hits? Things like this. Just have really, this is a good thing for the entire team to do, but especially the maintainer should be watching how new members are searching and finding or not finding things to review how discoverable these documents are and what they can do to improve it. Another sort of wildcard option you can consider as another thing to throw into your documentation to improve discoverability is this thing. I know them as awesome pages. This is something that exists on the internet. It's sort of popular amongst like GitHub users and whatnot. They'll make a page that is just for a specific like global topic, just a whole bunch of, you might be interested in this. Like there is an awesome Rust page, for example, on the Rust programming language. I think it's just called Awesome Rust. And there's links to, here are all like the popular crates for doing searching. Here are the popular crates for doing asynchronous programming. It's just a good entry point if you don't know where you're going to like branch out. You got to be careful with these because awesome pages are pretty nasty to maintain, and they can become bloated, and they can become just a mass of too much info if you're not careful. But they are an option. Click. Something else you can consider adding into your documentation is some kind of quick navigation or table of contents. The idea here is, again, if your documentation requires, hunting things down within a document, if there's too much there, or I should say too much, but it's a larger body of work. Having something like a table of contents or a quick navigation is really handy. They can potentially just go directly to the thing that they need from the full document. Or if they want the whole picture, they can just ignore the table of contents and move on. This also has sort of a side benefit of being like a what would you call this? A smoke signal, a potential flag of having too much documentation in one document. If even in a system where you're having fairly large documents, if you find you have a full page of table of contents, that is just way too much stuff. This is not quick help anymore, and this needs to be broken up. So you can kind of use your table of contents flag of, is there too much data in this one place? Should this be broken up, or is it, appropriate? Include a summary of the topic in an existing training. I think we mixed up our slides here, but essentially, in addition to something like a table of contents, you might also want to have a brief section, just having a short version of like what's in here, or like the quick takes. Having those early in documentation can be helpful for when that's all you really need, or especially when you already more or less know the subject matter. You just need a real quick, what was that method called, type of thing. Having a summary is really helpful for that. Click. Oh, and here we are. So yes, so this is one that I know Peter is an absolute like, have this. This is a ride or die. All documentation must have this type of deal. And again, like I was saying on the last slide, it's a short summary of the full document. If you're doing something more complex, like, well, I don't want that complex. How to apply materials to a primitive 3D, right? That could be summed up really briefly in like 2 lines. You just have like 2 lines of code, say, call this, call that, done. That doesn't give you the full picture. That doesn't explain what those function calls are actually doing, but maybe you don't need that much. Maybe you just need to, what was the damn method again? So having a quick summary, a quick thing to review if you're already fairly familiar, or even if you just need an answer right now. You need to learn this thing in more depth, but you know what? I got to get this ticket out the door today. Just a quick option. Great. Oh, another one. This sort of speaks to discoverability as well. There is always, when documentation, a phase where the reader is evaluating, is this even the document I want? Is this even showing me the things that apply to my problem? The summary can be great for that. The summary gives a real quick, this is what we're going to talk about. This is what I'm going to explain to you. So the reader can say, yep, this is what I wanted for. Now I'll go read the proper document, or nope, that's not what I wanted. I'll keep searching. So summary can help with discoverability as well. Click. Right. So this is an important keynotes thing, similar to summary in a way, but it's a little bit more verbose. a little bit more adaptable. So again, it's meant to be like an easy to absorb section of your document. It tends to be more like fact based rather than informative or training or anything like that. It's very like bam, 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 fact, 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 fact. Um, if there are anything like that you really want to get across to the reader as being like really important, this is a great place for it. You can even like color code it with like bold and red and I don't know, explosion emojis or something. Like, don't use this if you're rendering in low detail, or don't use this if you're in the middle of snapping, stuff like that. Um, you can throw these important notes in there. Just be absolutely sure that they see these things. If you know that this document is often connected to other documents because those other ones are relevant or there's more information or anything like that, this is also a really good place to add in like links to those other pages. Which, by the way, is something you should be doing in your documentation. Make sure to reference other documents that already exist when they apply. It makes things a lot easier for the reader. Click. So I did throw together just a quick example what I mean by working out like a template or answering these questions. A thing you're going to want to do early on, and maybe you even develop this over time, but you want something like a template or a starting place or a copy paste, whatever you want to call it, some kind of if you're making documentation, this is what it should look like, or you should start from here kind of a thing. And over here on the left is just an example I whipped up of a potential template. I think this one I did in Notion, if I had to guess. So on the left here, I decided that I wanted a section for contents. I want a section for summary. I want the actual like content. And at the bottom is all those like keywords for aliasing and improved searching and whatnot. And over here on the right, you see a potential example of just some random text that looks like CM stuff I threw together to show an example of what a finished document might look like. And again, this is just based on some arbitrary decisions I made in my fake documentation here in terms of how much content do I want? Do I want a table of contents? Do I want links? Do I want a summary? All these things. I made some arbitrary decisions. Yours will look different. Your software will be probably different. I just wanted to convey the idea of have a template or something like it, just so people who are creating documentation or creating documents for the first time don't have to figure this thing out for themselves. And also, as the maintainer, they don't have to make this stuff from scratch. They can at least comprehend what's coming in and what means what. It saves them a lot of time and effort as well. Click. I think that might be it for me. Yeah, back later.
All right. Thank you, Paul, for that. And yes, having made probably hundreds of pages, it's nice to just be able to copy paste and get your format in. Keeps things moving. Okay, organization. So organization encourages good habits. So keep your notes organized. A big thing for this is new employees won't know keywords. Probably the roughest start to CM was Tim going, "Hey, just look this up," and I'm like, "I don't know what this is. You're using these words, but I don't understand them at all." So by having them organized into sections, you can go, I am working on 3D. Let's check the 3D section. I might run into what I'm looking for. I'm looking for 2D. That's also where Paul was talking about keywords, aliases, and so on. New hires are absolutely not going to know any of the things you take for granted. So you definitely want to keep them organized. That way they can find them, and they can find things near each other as well in case they get close but not quite with their search for it. Organized note structure will turn into organized code. So again, this is where for our code standards, we have recommended, not required, structure to it. So that way people know where to expect things. If you're seeing the part numbers at the top of the file, there must be nothing below there because we keep part numbers near the bottom. And make documentation a one-stop shop. So very much once you have all this, you want to make sure people are going to it. This is where you have stores like Costco, Sam's Club, Meijer, where they don't need to go anywhere else. So by doing that, they learn, aha, where am I looking? I'm just going to our documentation. That will keep reinforcing, keep using the documentation, keep encouraging them to keep it up to date. Having had one thing to be careful with this is formal documents like employee handbooks. legal agreements and so on. Use references for those and be very careful with it. But outside of that, try to put everything inside your documentation. Okay, organizing it. So you want it to be intuitive and distinct sections. So as you're putting this together, as you start having more and more and more and more, at first, when you have 2 documents, you don't need to try real hard. They're going to see the 2 documents and you'll be good. As you start to have 50, you're going to want to go, okay, how do I have these into places where I have them in order, but how do I make this easy to go through? A lot of times you'll see, and it's pretty much a modern thing, where nested choices. You go, I'm at the A table of contents or A set of a menu. You click and another menu comes up. That's where you want to be able to easily navigate it. For someone who doesn't know the keywords to search for, they can go, okay, I'm looking for something with materials. Well, materials only really apply to 3D, so I'm going to start in the 3D section. A lot of these times, these words use a prefix of get, so I'm going to look for get. Oh, look, I found a get material method. So having these things nested into obvious choices will also help speed it up. And then should result in quick searches with relevant pages near each other. So that way, if they get close and not quite, this is like hand grenades and horseshoes where close is good enough. Again, I said this before, if you can't find what you're looking for in 30 seconds, it's not easy enough to find. This is an effort. You will have to spend time trying to focus and making your documentation easy to find, but this will pay off in the end for sure. Role-specific information. We've recently found this to be very useful as we start to grow our documentation even more and grow our roles. So developers tend to need to know things about customer products. They need to know code quirks. They need to know functions and methods, things that our QA absolutely don't need. Well, they do need to know the customers, but the QA need to know the product info. They need to know how the products work, information about them, what's expected, what's not expected, industry standards. And also quirks of the customers and the products. So a whole different set of information. And then you have managers who may need to know about your customers. They may need personnel info or trends for when they're releasing, exact release dates, quirks of things, conferences. So you're going to have this. We just have most of this is publicly available to everyone at our company. However, we section it off. So that way, when you start searching, you can go, I'm a developer. So when I'm looking in CET for something, or I should say, we'll separate between CM and CT designer, where you'll have a method that refers to appears in both of them. But because you know which section you're looking in, you're going to get the right one rather than hitting something else. So role specific information, also useful. So even if information isn't useful to everyone all the time, it's still worth recording. Whoop. This also plays into hit by a truck, which is one of my favorite policies. So if you are hit by a truck and you have all this information available, when someone else comes on to go, hey, they're sick, I need to take over this meeting, they know they have readily found information to go, quirk of this customer is they like to have coffee with their meeting. Let's make sure coffee's ready. So having this really helps with ensuring that you have backups for your information and for your people. Okay, company information. So I have found that this is some of the most frequently useful information that people access, certainly within the first 6 months. After that, it starts to be a little more in depth. But we have at PEZ, we care a lot about our core values and our motto, or we don't really have a motto, but I guess complexity solved is our motto. But core values are important to us. Hopefully they're important to you. And that's why if you want people to know them, remember, one-stop shop. So make sure you put it in there. Employee handbook reference. So again, I had mentioned before that having documents in there is, or you want to have references to them because you want to have one source of truth. So that way you're only updating one thing. However, again, if they're looking for information, you're going to want to go, I need to look something up in the handbook. They'll look for the handbook and you just provide a link to, please go to this document. Here's the handbook. Process references. So again, for another document, you have references to it, makes it really easy to find. Office information. I will mention, this is not one size fits all. These are just things that I have frequently had new hires, because I work with them the most, asking me about. And after I've answered the same question 5 times, I go, you know what? Let's just write that question down because I'm tired of answering it. That's a great way to get your documentation as a kind of like a, hey, by the way, when you should write something down, if someone has asked the question twice. And that's where favorite donuts may not work for you. When we have a celebration at work, I like to bring in donuts, and I got tired of forgetting who likes what donuts. So now we have a much higher satisfaction when I buy 24 donuts for the office. All right. Common notes. So these things are likely to be common across everyone. I think a lot of, for anyone who's worked with third-party software, there's usually an FAQ, a frequently asked questions page, which is your catch-all page for errors. A lot of times for software you're using, you'll have errors with error messages that pop up, which make them very easy to search for. You just do a literal string search. Hey, here's the error message I got. You should hopefully have, or what I recommend is you have the error, the cause, and the solution. So that way people can quickly rapid fire through them. This has been wonderful for Build Central and Build Center, which are highly complex operations. And sometimes the solution is easy as try again. So very nice to have, and you don't have to go try to find someone to ask, hey, what should I do? Also have other frequently referenced but random information in here. There is also have sections or documents for to be filed TBF or to be determined. I have a whole page of just to be sorted pages that when I have time, I'll go through and put them in the right spot. And sometimes if you're developing a whole new piece of software or you're shifting your industry a bit, you're not going to know where to put it. So then you leave it there. You can search for it. It's referenceable. And then you come back during one of those times you've designated to review your notes and go, okay, let's take a breath. Let's review this. Maybe talk to some experts or other people in the company to go, where should these documents live? Where are you going to find it? And then per what we mentioned before, sanity check it by asking one of your new hires to find it. All right, training. So training your developers, and I use developers just as a number one thing that I do, but or number one thing that I'm usually training on. You'll also have training for QA managers, etc. When you're training them on on these materials for your documentation, show them what it is. Show them the information of it. Obviously, don't go in depth into it. I would show them how to find like, oh, your new hire, you're likely going to want to know about holidays. You're going to want to know about pay. You're going to want to know about the office, where the cafeteria or the bathrooms are, how to make coffee, how to file your taxes, things like this. So show them what it is and show them how useful it is. Show them how to use it. So that's where you keep it. So KISD, keep it simple dev. Basically, it should be, as you're doing this, it should be incredibly simple. That's how you don't have to show them how easy it is to use it just by showing them to use it a few times. Oh my God, it's so simple. It's easy to do. You set a great example. So make sure you have things that you know exactly where you're searching for. Also then test it. This is one where it seems like such an obvious thing. People kind of gloss over it to go, oh, I need to remember this electrical thing more than I need to know this documentation, or they're a little overwhelmed. Test the information because it'll be, hey, by the way, we already went for where the holidays are. Please look up for me. How many vacation days do you have? And then they go, oh, let me just type in vacation. And look, vacation note comes up, shows you how many days you have, and may have a link, a relevant link to holidays. Helps reinforce the whole thing, keeps it easy, keeps it useful. All right, any questions? And I believe it is on to Paul.
All right. So, all right, we've talked about how to get people on the same place as you. We've talked about how you can structure your documentation, what should go into your documentation, and how you use it and maintain and all these things. But what actually is the documentation going to be? Like, is it just going to be a random collection of barroom napkins with scribbles on them? Thank you. Is it going to be some advanced tool? Is it going to be something your company has to invest $10,000 in order to get on board? Who knows? So this section is dedicated to some of the tools that are out there. But first, before we look at the individual tools, some qualities of these documentation tools that you should be asking yourself, not just when you get started, but also as you're like vetting out different tools, sort of re-asking and even reevaluating where you are on these scales and what's important to you. Something to consider. How easy is it to set this thing up at a team-wide scale? So something like, say, Teams, or maybe that's not really a good one. OneNote, there we go. OneNote but might be an option for you. Setting up involves setting up a business account with my Configura. You're probably going to have your IT talk to, or not Configura, Microsoft. I mean, you can talk to us, but we don't know anything about it. You're gonna have your IT person talk with Microsoft. There's going to be maybe local installations, maybe remote installations. Like there's a whole freaking thing going into setting up a OneNote or an Office 365 account. Whereas setting up, say, a series of text files, well, that's done already. So this is something to consider. How important is it to you to keep something simple to set up, or do you have more capacity to invest in this at a team-wide scale? Same thing for an individual. Are they going to have to install a bunch of different software in order to do this, or is it entirely using stuff that comes pre-installed on their computers, or stuff that's available using a web interface? Maybe you have more tolerance for this, maybe you have less tolerance for this. Learning curve. Some documentation is as simple as just start mashing keys and then you're good to go. Others are going to require learning maybe different kinds of syntaxes or file formats, or different UI and stuff. So what kind of capacity do you have for a learning curve? Cost of maintenance, both in terms of just financial cost, money, but also like time. How much time are you willing to let your maintainer spend on maintaining documentation? What kind of integrations do you need or want with the rest of your environment? Do you need something that integrates with, say, Slack, or something that can automatically push notifications out to Teams, or a GitLab merge request or something? Like, what kind of integrations are you going to need or want? How important is it to control permissions? Is it fine for your documentation to be a free-for-all where everyone is effectively admin and can do whatever you want? Or do you want to have certain features locked down to only, say, the maintainer? Do you want different parts of your documentation to have different sets of permissions? These are all questions you're going to want to consider. Portability, or transferability, or exit strategy, whatever you want to call it. If you use this tool for a long period of time, you might decide much later that you're unhappy with it, or maybe your situation has changed and you want to move to a new one. How able are you to do that with a given tool? Some are very, very proprietary with entirely their own tools and syntax and whatnot, and so getting off of those platforms is going to involve a whole lot of copy paste. Others are just they're just files, and so portability is just, well, you copy paste the files or whatnot, or you just copy the directory over or whatever. So it's very easy. These are all things you should be asking yourself as you're choosing a tool for managing your knowledge base. And so, yeah, what follows is, I don't remember if it's like 4 or 5 different tools that I decided were good to look at as examples. But there are dozens, if not hundreds, out there I've seen. It's just these were sort of like the ones to talk about. Click. So we got OneNote. Last time I checked, this was the tool that Platinum Edge Solutions was using. This has a lot of wins to it, in that it is just part of Office 365, which a lot of organizations are already invested in. Not so much if you're invested in Google, but there's probably an equivalent. So the availability is there for a lot of folks. The individual documents are very interesting in how they work, in that they are a block-like format, but they're very, very free form. You can have a picture here, you can have a table there, you can have a drawing down here, a table there, a Miro board over here, all in this one document. And it can be incredibly free form if you want it. Or it could just be all text and searchable and organizable that way. It's whatever you want it to be. I myself, one of the problems I had with OneNote is the fact that it organizes in a fairly forced way. You have, I think it's notebooks at the top level, then you have like sections, and then chapters, and then pages or something like that. But it's a very like, this is the organization, deal with it kind of a thing. I myself didn't like that, but that could actually be a benefit. Having that kind of forced hierarchy means you don't have to ask those questions, and you have to make your documentation fit into a hierarchy, which can be a good thing. Collaboration is pretty easy with OneNote because it's web-based. It also has pretty good integrations with things like Teams and things like that. It's very easy to just share an entire notebook or a page with someone and say, hey, can you put your notes in here, or can you fix this, or do this for me, whatnot. Pretty easy with OneNote. It is entirely proprietary. You don't get access to the back end. You don't get to store things your way. You get the data that OneNote shows you in their UI, and that's it. So in terms of portability, it's a bit tricky. You're going to be doing some copy pasting, and because their documents are so freeform, that might not port well to other knowledge bases that aren't so freeform. It's going to be a little rough. Click. Notion, pretty popular one these days. It's an entirely online tool. I think they might have some desktop clients, but they're really just sort of, exposing web views and stuff. This is one of the tools that uses what's called a block style documentation. It's not super important what that actually means. It's just a certain style of document editing. You're going to see it's consistent across a couple of different tools. It's got some really great collaboration options because it's entirely web-based. That means everyone just has it available if they have a web browser, which is really cool. I've seen but not experienced some pretty good control of like permissions and who can see and do what, which is pretty cool. Again, though, this is entirely a proprietary format with an asterisk on this one, in that supposedly from Notion, you can do like an export out to, I think it's Markdown files and CSV files. So potentially you can do that, although I've heard that output is not super great. But it's something. But generally speaking, I know a lot of people myself that use Notion either as a personal knowledge repository or even as a team-based repository. I've seen that once, and a lot of people are really happy with this one. Click. Loop. So this is sort of Microsoft's answer to Notion. This is still a pretty new one. I don't even know how well they're like marketing or advertising this one yet. It just sort of snuck into the tool set at one point. But very much like Notion, it is a block style documents. It has, I would say, the best in terms of collaborative options, especially if you're already on board with, say, like Teams. I don't know about Slack, but maybe. There's this really cool thing you can do in Teams where you can like drop in a loop into like a chat or whatnot, and you can actually edit it in that chat. So you'll be in a chat and watching as multiple people are editing this document like live. So it's pretty cool. Again, entirely proprietary. I haven't heard about any imports or exports from Loop, but maybe that's something they're gonna add. If I had any complaints about this one, it was sharing and grouping and like domains and whatnot are kind of weird with Loop. I didn't quite understand them. It's hard to share one document versus an entire workspace, or maybe it was the other way around. Like it was very strange. So I would say for smaller organizations, that's probably totally fine. You're just going to share the entire workspace anyway. But if you're part of a larger organization where you might want to do some granular sharing, Loop might be tricky. Try it out. I mean, if it's free with Microsoft, but bit of warning. Click. Obsidian, another one that's become very popular lately. In a lot of ways, the UI looks similar to something like Notion, but the way it actually runs is very different. It is based entirely on files, Markdown files, actually. And I think they just added support for CSV, although it might be confusing someone else. So this is a desktop application, so you'd have to like download this and run this on your own computer, but then it's more or less just a glorified Markdown file editor with support for like folder structures and stuff like this. It has a huge array of plugins that you can add to it. I've seen people do some really crazy things with Obsidian, turning it into like a tool for doing like running Dungeons and Dragon games with like character sheets and dice rollers and stuff in there. Others are doing really cool like metrics on their documentation and the really cool like linking graph things. Well, that was just built in, but there's a lot of cool ways you can customize your documentation and features you can add to it just through the plugin network. and how the plugins work in Obsidian, I think is also really cool, and that they're also like part of the documentation. They're not a thing you install on your computer. They're installed into your documentation, so anyone will just have those plugins as well. It's pretty cool. However, there is some collaboration uh, uh, bumps in the road to consider. Because it's highly file-based, you're going to have to find some way to sync these files between everyone. There is a built-in collaboration with their like pro option. However, I've heard that it's a little bit weird, a little bit wonky. There's sometimes a little bit hiccups there and glitches there. Internally, we have a team that's been experimenting with Obsidian and just keeping it synchronized using a OneDrive type thing, where we have a folder in OneDrive that they put all their documentation into, and that just use that to automatically sync between everyone. That works pretty well. Because it's all in markdown files and it's all in like I said, maybe the CSV files, hyper portable. You can take this stuff anywhere. If ever you decide you don't like Obsidian, you can take it just about any other tool you can imagine. So it is a very easy one to get into and potentially get out of if you don't like it. And if I believe, I can remember the next slide, no click yet, is the one that I felt like I didn't really want to discuss, but I felt like if I did discuss it, people are going to gang up on me. So click. Yeah, org mode. Click. So, I mean, I wasn't going to be able to have a conversation with CM developers and documentation and not bring up org mode at some point. Someone would find me in, the parking lot and hit me with a lead pipe. Org mode is a big deal for some folks. And if it's not a big deal for you, I'm sorry, I might be doing it to you. Org mode was, I think, if I remember right, originally just put together as like a fancy to-do list, but the developers of it just went absolutely crazy with it, adding features and functionality to it, things like automation and making calendars and automating emails and all kinds of crazy stuff for it. But it's also a pretty functional documentation tool. In that it supports things like markup. You can see in the screen here, we've got like headers and checkboxes and lists and all this tables and all this kind of stuff. So it can do some involved documentation stuff. It is sort of file-based. I mean, it's entirely file-based using a mode inside of Emacs called org mode. So good news, if you're watching this presentation, that means you probably have a developer license, which means you have access to this because it's just baked into Emacs. The one limitation here is that out of the box, there isn't any collaboration options. It is just a file sitting on your hard drive. But there is an option. There is in Emacs this package you can get called CRDT, and it adds a lot of collaborative functionalities to a bunch of Emacs stuff, including org mode. So you take org mode and you slap the CRDT package onto it, and now you've actually got collaborative org mode. And this can mean collaborative documentation. So if you're a fan of Emacs, you never want to leave Emacs, you can do org mode. You can use the CRDT package and establish all of your teams being in org mode together, like a little org mode cult, if that's your thing. And good news, if ever you want to hear anything about org mode, you want to know more about it, you want to know how people use it, just go into a room and say org mode, and they'll find you. It's like a smoke signal. They always find you. I joke a lot about org mode because the people who like it are really into it. So I might be selling you your first hit of a drug, and I apologize for that if that happens to you. So yeah, this was, I don't remember how many it was, 4 or 5 different examples of possible tools you can use for knowledge base. There's lots out there. If none of these do it for you, I would definitely encourage you just hit the internet and see what you can find. Click, but I think we're done.
Yep.
Yeah, we made it. We did it.
Yep. Well, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Paul. And yeah, I hope I love documentation. I do it. I'm sure I was partially hired on due to it. It's paid dividends, and I love talking about it. So if you guys have questions during the presentation or afterwards or at the bar, happy to talk and go over it. One one of my favorite subjects, and also Paul also enjoys it as well. So,
I mean, it's like a third of my job, basically. It's just documentation and training. So yeah. I'll also definitely chew your ear off about it.
Mhm. Perfect. So feel free to contact us. Our emails are listed. We'd love to get your feedback. Um, but yeah, I also love, I should say I prefer in person because it's just easier. So feel free. Hopefully we'll see you at the conference and talk to us then. Paul, anything else you want to go or say or?
I think that's it. I hope we see your experience, if not this year, the next one or the following one, or all three or all of them. Yeah, I look forward to seeing everyone. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.